Isle Delphino's an idyllic location for a tropical vacation. But have you ever wondered how long you could actually last if you had to live here? And I don't mean as Mario, I mean how long you could last, like as a human in a survival situation. Like sure, an amusement park is nice to visit, but have you ever tried to sleep in a Six Flags overnight, fighting with the rats for leftover fried dough they throw out in the dumpsters behind the water slide? Awful. And look at this level. It's some blocks in the sky. What do you even do in this situation? Well, wonder no longer, because me and a crack team of survival experts consisting of my editor, and that's it, have gone through every single level in Super Mario Sunshine and ranked them not only on how long your average human could live in them, but also how well you can live in them. Because while I might be able to beat off all the rats for that fried dough, that really didn't feel right to put in the same tier as staying in the 4-star hotel. But first, let's lay down some of the ground rules as to what we actually need here to survive on Isle Delphino. First, we're going to be considering the situation as if we were spawning into these levels in the exact same place Mario does, with nothing more than the clothes on our back. No flood, no guns, no bundles of cash to buy things with, it's just us. Second, we need to survive entirely within the level we are assessing. We cannot ever leave these levels, even if there is a way to do so. So, no leaving the hellish lava river and Corona Mountain to go pick up some refreshing fruit down in Delphino Plaza. Now, obviously, without fresh water, we will die in about 72 hours. And without food, we can only last about a month, maybe 2 before we die of starvation. But that's not all we're going to be needing here in order to survive. Heck, even Mr. Bing Bing Wahoo himself has problems surviving on Isle Delphino because, despite being able to jump superhuman heights and survive superhuman falls, Mario has one fatal flaw in that he is white. And I'm not even joking here. If at any point Mario loses his hat and is exposed directly to the sunlight, he will immediately begin to take damage and eventually die, presumably of a basal cell carcinoma. But while the human test survival subject I have can't jump as high or fall as far as Mario, he does have Mario beat in one area, and it's that he is even whiter. So he would probably die even sooner, honestly. But what that does mean is that in order to survive, not only are we going to need food and water, but we will also need shelter as well. Now, for the sake of the video, I am going to give him more than 30 seconds in the sun before he dies, because otherwise, he's just going to die instantly everywhere he goes, and that makes for a lame video. But with that settled, let's get started by taking a look at the first main level of the game, Bianco Hills. Right off the bat, we have some fountains along with a freshwater river, so plenty to drink. And we have a good number of fruits scattered throughout the village that just kind of infinitely respawn as well. Now, considering how video gamey it is, some people might not like the idea of surviving off of infinitely respawning fruit. So for those people, we'll have to ask the question, can you eat Mario enemies? I mean, look at this guy. This guy looks yummy as fuck. But if we ever actually kill one, they just kind of disappear, leaving a gold coin if we're lucky. You can't eat that. So if you want to eat them, we're going to have to change not only the rules of how fruit spawning works, but also enemy spawning and despawning works as well. And frankly, who's to say these are even edible? I think a lot of these creatures are implied to be like magic painting beings that just kind of pop into existence every now and again, and that doesn't really sound particularly edible to me. So just to simplify things a bit, I'm going to assume that in our hypothetical survival scenarios, everything behaves just the same way it does in game, meaning that if a fruit keeps respawning, I can keep eating them. But for those of you who think we should be eating the strut and stews and the pokies instead, I will note for you when there are enemies if you think it could make a difference. Spoilers though, there's no actual scenarios where it makes a difference. There's always both fruit and enemies in a level, believe it or not. Regardless of how you consider it, Bianco Hills has plenty of food. So with the food and water sorted, our biggest problem seems like it's going to be finding shelter. There are 2 caves, but both of these teleport you to alternate dimensions full of floating blocks, which I'm going to be counting as their own separate levels, and so are ineligible for use while we were surviving in Bianco Hills proper, assuming we could even get out of these floating hellscapes. Like, how does Mario do it? Now, we could always take some of these trees and make a small tent from the palm leaves, but that would not only leave us vulnerable to the hostile enemies of the level, but to the hostile villagers as well. When talking to the villagers as Mario, he will receive multiple xenophobic remarks, treating him as an untrustworthy outsider, with one villager even going so far as resorting to violence when Mario speaks to him, throwing him dozens of feet into the air out of pure malice. Now, we don't know if it's a racial thing, but all of this does remain the case even after Mario saves the village multiple times. So it definitely doesn't seem the case that someone like Mario could even earn his place in this community via merit. For some reason, he will always be an outsider. And as someone who hasn't even saved the village a single time, as far as I'm concerned, if you're a human in Bianco Hills, when the sun goes down, the ropes come out. We need a locked door to sleep behind here, or at least someplace less vulnerable than a tent made out of some tree branches I found down by the river. Which brings us to our one ray of sunshine in this racist little bumpkin town. This blue pianta who says he's afraid of being alone with all the monsters around. You know what the best way of overcoming the crippling fear of loneliness is? That's right, a roommate who doesn't have a job and can't pay rent. You'll never have time to yourself again. Now we're going to need to work to get close to this guy, forming a friendship with him and using his fear in order to foster a sense of an emotional dependency upon our company, with the end goal of him allowing us to live in his house rent-free. It's gonna be tricky, but given how quickly he's opening up to Mario despite his outsider status, this Pianta seems desperate. So if we just keep acting friendly and keep reminding him of all the scary monsters that keep attacking the village, I think we got a real shot of this working here. Now, we're gonna be kind of bumming it here, but at least we're surviving the village of Bianco Hills. But what about those 2 pocket dimensions in the cave I mentioned earlier? First, we have the hillside cave secret. Now, since these secret levels are just built to be platforming challenges and less like real-life places in the vein of Bianco Hills, survival in these places is going to be a lot more difficult. But that doesn't mean it's always going to be impossible. Just most of the time. Right off the bat, we have a palm tree here. Unfortunately, palm trees have no nutritional values for humans, and while I'm made of paper and can live off the sawdust from the trunk of the tree, if the editor dies, there will be no one to make my YouTube videos for me anymore, and that would be very sad. So we need to find some human food as well. Fortunately, he's not going to be starving to death here, because he's going to be dying of dehydration instead. There is no source of water in this level whatsoever. So unfortunately, while we're going to be able to survive for a time, we will be dead in about 72 hours here. But while the hillside cave may be a no-go for us, how about the secret of the dirty lake cave? Well, as you can see, we have some trees and an easy access to a 1-up mushroom we can use as food, which is going to be really convenient for us because despite clearly acting as a source of fresh water, there is not one drop of it to be found in this cave. So once we die of dehydration, we can at least come back once using the mushroom, so that we can die a second time. Technically, this does let us last longer than in the hillside cave, but I kind of want to kill myself after going 4 hours without water, let alone 144. So I'm going to be putting it in the same tier as hillside cave. Honestly, this might even be worse. Overall, we're 1 for 3. Not a great start. But now that we're done exploring Isle Delphino's most scenic sundown town, why don't we head back to Mario Sunshine's hub world to see what we have there? Delphino Plaza is not only a fantastic hub world, but it's actually a pretty nice place to live in and of itself. Right off the bat, we have vendors giving out free food. I mean, they say you have to pay, but like, they don't stop me, so free food. And if you feel like being a goody two-shoes, there's plenty of trees just laden with fruit and multiple freshwater fountains we can drink from. So all we need to survive here is just to find some shelter. But while there's housing everywhere, is there any place we can actually stay? I asked around, but it didn't seem like there would be anyone willing to take me in as a roommate like there was in Bianco Hills. What I did find, however, is a large number of Pianta who not only wanted me to gather fruit for them, but would also pay me a blue coin to do it. On top of that, they implied that they wanted my help in the future. That's regular employment, baby. I got a job and income. I'm the city fruit fetcher now. Now, unfortunately, Mario Sunshine does not have a room rental minigame where we can actually check on housing prices. But if you take 10 of these blue baddies, you can actually buy a shine spray, a guardian spirit sacred to the people of Isle Delphino. And if this is enough money to buy a minor deity, there's almost no way in hell it's not enough money to rent a room out for a month somewhere. After all, we have multiple shops running entirely with just 6 fruit apiece, and they're somehow managing to make a living just off of that. So if I can just gather and sell 12 fruit a day, I'm not merely bumming it like I was in Bianco Hills, but I'm gonna be living large here in Delphino Plaza. Easily one of the most livable places in Isle Delphino. But the plaza itself isn't the only level we need to look at here, because hidden throughout the city there are a number of secret levels we need to look into as well. And where better to start off than by taking this boat back to where we first arrived on the island. Delphino Airstrip is one of the smallest levels of Mario Sunshine, and frankly, doesn't have much more going on for it than what the name suggests. It is a single airstrip located on a small island off the coast of Isle Delphino itself. There's water everywhere, of course, but most of it's that yucky, no-good salt water. And you can call me a snub if you want, but I don't like my water salty. You know, because you'll die if you drink it. Fortunately for us, however, we have this water tank here, along with this tub with a big ice cube in it. I mean, like, someone's stocking these things here and leaving them unattended, so I can just kind of suck on this thing for a bit if needed. And besides from the fact that these benches are apparently just ghostly apparitions and you can't actually sit on them, spooky stuff, this hut works well enough for shelter. Plus, the airstrip seems abandoned when not in use, so the chances of me getting kicked out for more than a few hours at a time are pretty low. Our only real issue here is that there's no food on the airstrip whatsoever. But what about around the airstrip? you know, in the water. There's fish everywhere, swimming around the strip, talking about the strip, even jumping over the strip. Hell, all we need to do is bat one of these bad boys out of the air and we got dinner. We could even use this palm tree here to help us catch something. Just cut this bad boy down, we might be able to fashion some wood into a basic spear and do some spear fishing, allowing us to get some of these guys further away from the shore. So we're definitely not going to be starving to death. Well, with that being said, this place appears to be pretty lonely and abandoned when there aren't any planes coming or going, and with such a small shelter with naught but the illusions of furnishing to comfort us, I feel like it's going to be a pretty miserable place to live personally. But going back to the mainland and then back off of it again to these little rocks, we find the next secret level of Delphino Plaza. The secret slide, which you're not gonna believe this, is just a slide. On top of that, this slide is just kind of floating in the sky, disconnected from everything else. I never understood how Mario gets out of these levels after he gets the shines, but I like to imagine he just kind of uses the shines power to like do his Jumpman thing and kind of jumps extra hard to get out of here. Unfortunately, I am not Mario, and I am stuck here on this tiny wooden platform with no food, no shelter, and no water. Death within 72 hours is a certainty. Yeah, no, this is a bad one. But what if instead of being stuck on a nightmare slide where we were wishing there was some way to survive, we were instead stuck on a nightmare pachinko machine where I wish I was fucking dead already? This fucking piece of shit, stupid ass level is just as bad as the slide when it comes to raw survivability. No food, no water, no shelter. But now if we even try to explore the level, there was a chance we'd just immediately get thrown into the sky after glitching around this board. I don't really think I can include the game's glitches into survival consideration, considering they're not like canon, but you know, I still hate this level so goddamn much. I'm gonna be putting it in the very bottom of the dehydration category. If I ever wake up in this goddamn place, I am just throwing myself over the edge immediately. I am not going to slowly die here while this thing taunts me in my dying hours. But on the plus side, I do know one place where we won't be dying immediately. If you charge through these doors in between the two coves, we can find this turbo jump level, which features a number of water fountains littered throughout the course. So we won't be dying of dehydration like the last few levels. We'll just have to wait a couple days to die of exposure instead, because there's no shelter and it's sunny as shit. It has to mix things up from time to time though, you know? And speaking of mixing things up, it's time to die of dehydration again. Lily Pad Ride is probably one of the most infamous levels of Mario Sunshine, and was the only one I wasn't able to beat as a child. I mean, I beat it in like my second try when I replayed it for this video, so it's not that hard, but the controls are a little rough. We don't need to complete the level though. Just survive on it, which is also going to be pretty rough because the only source of water here is poison. Dehydration in 3 days tops. Okay, so far, most of the levels in Delphino Plaza have been absolute death traps, but there's still one we haven't looked at. Delphino Plaza's Tall Grass minigame. That is the official name, by the way. Tall Grass minigame. I don't actually see a minigame here. It's just like the rest of the game, honestly. So unless we're going to start considering every level in a video game a minigame, which they aren't, look, that's not what we're here to judge. Just, how can we survive here? Well, right off the bat, we have a ton of grass. Shocker, I know. A series of trees, some holes in the ground, this fire burning eternally in the corner for some reason, a couple of piantas, pokies, and some birds. And if we look in the corner here, we can also find a single watermelon, which will provide us with some much needed calories and hydration. But unfortunately, this watermelon doesn't respawn when broken, so we're only gonna get an extra day or two out of this thing. We're gonna have to find some other way to survive. But if we can take some of the leaves off these trees, not only could we use them to fashion some sort of a hat for ourselves or something to hide from the sun, but we can also lay them over one of these holes to create a little makeshift shelter. Not glamorous, but it will get us through those harsh sunny days in this hellish skybox. Furthermore, we may just be able to use some of the wood from these trees to create a basic spear, and then use that spear to kill some of these birds flying around for some meat. Or the pokies if you're going to be considering the enemies edible as well. You know, assuming they don't just disappear like they do in-game. We could even cook the meat over the eternal fire as well. However, the big issue on this level is going to come from the fact that besides this watermelon, there is no source of hydration on this island. Now, given how much grass and foliage there is here, it's pretty clear this place receives regular rainfall. Plants just don't grow like this otherwise, so there's definitely the possibility that while we're here, it could rain, and we could collect water from that. But the thing is, if it doesn't rain in like the first week we're here, we're dead. And seeing as this is a very serious and scientific video, we won't be working off hypotheticals here. We're going to be lasting a bit longer than some of the other levels thanks to the melon, but death within 5 days for sure. If you really want to, we can put this one down as barely survivable in the homeless tier, but again, I personally wouldn't want to test my luck here. But with the secret levels of Delphino Plaza done, it's time to head back to another main stage, starting with the second major level of Mario Sunshine, Rico Harbor. As the name suggests, Rico Harbor takes place entirely within a harbor on a coastline. You might be concerned, given its location in the ocean, that we would be struggling to find any natural sources of food and water to live off of. And to be honest, you would be correct. There are not any natural sources of fresh water or food here at all, but there are plenty of artificial sources. This fountain can serve as a decent source of fresh water, and there's this free fruit dispenser near the market. I mean, I don't know if you're really supposed to use this to get free fruit, but I mean, no one's stopping me, so free fruit. So already, with food and water taken care of, we're looking pretty good. Just like Bianca Hills, it's looking like our most difficult task will be to find shelter. Unlike Bianca Hills, however, since this is a harbor town, the residents seem not only used to, but much more welcome to seeing new faces in town. So at the very least, I don't need to be afraid of getting strung up if I got caught out by myself at night. This lets us be a bit more creative with our shelter, and I know just the place for it, because if we ground pound this little manhole cover, we have an underground tunnel we can hide in. Now this is technically a public route, and I honestly can't imagine it being too comfortable, but at the very least we can hide in here from the sunshine when needed, fulfilling our 3 requirements for basic survival. But why settle for basic survival? We can do even better, because Rico Harbor is a bustling little center for business, with dock workers, sailors, and a variety of street vendors, along with some construction workers as well. There's plenty of opportunity for work in this town, meaning plenty of opportunities for us to become employed and earn ourselves an income. Now, I don't have an economic report to see how much we can make from actually working here. No Isle Delphino Bureau of Labor Statistics I can check with to see what these people are actually being paid, but these merchants and dock workers need to be making enough to afford rent somewhere around here. Probably in the housing area, you know, the only housing in the area. So if we can get ourselves just one of the many jobs in this harbor, that means we can almost certainly get an apartment for ourselves. Maybe even start a savings account? Get a 401k or something? I don't really know. The important thing is that we're living a much better life instead of bumming it on some paranoid dude's couch. So I'm going to have to rate Rico Harbor as not only a place where we can survive, but live a pretty decent life as well. And while I'm here, I'm just going to mention it. I'm not ranking the blooper racetrack as a different level because it's just in the sewers of Rico Harbor. It's the same place, there's just a loading screen behind it. However, if you really want to know, you cannot live off of the piss and shit-filled sewer water of the city. If you drink this, you will die. Mystery solved. But aside from that, Rico Harbor does have one secret level we still need to look into. The secret of Rico Harbor Tower. The entire level is clearly inside, with us being surrounded by this big TV screen or whatever, so shelter is not going to be an issue. But there's nothing besides these large wooden toy blocks. No water, no food, just childish whimsy and imagination, which, unfortunately, I cannot consume for nutrition. Now, unlike most levels in this game, I do feel like I could actually navigate this one if I was a human. So I am going to say that it is possible to collect these 2 green mushrooms in this level, so we can at least eat those and then die 2 more times of dehydration. I'm not sure why you would put yourself through that, but it's certainly an option available to us. That being said, however, whether or not you come back from it, yeah, can't really call it surviving if you're literally dying, can you? So, dead in 72 hours tops. But with the harbor settled, it's finally time to sail off to Gelato Beach, a lovely seaside getaway covered in these fucking bastards. If a single one of these pieces of shit touch me, I will die. A normal human cannot survive this. This whole place is cartoonishly dangerous. That being said, if we can just stick to the edges of the beach and avoid the fucking cataquacks, I don't think it'll be too hard to survive here. There's always fruit growing on these trees, along with a ton of fish in the coral reef just offshore, so plenty to eat. Plus, we can always take some of these palm tree leaves and use them to make a tent we can hide from the sun in as well. With food and shelter sorted out though, we're still going to have one problem, in that despite the fact that there's water everywhere, none of it's fresh water. Fortunately, however, drinking water you find lying on the ground like some sort of a peasant isn't the only way to stay hydrated on this island. For you see, we also have some watermelons that grow naturally here, and given that watermelons are about 90%, water, we can use them for hydration. On top of that, these things are massive. Just look at this thing. Considering you only need about 1 gallon of water per day to live, a single one of these things could keep us going for months on end. Harvesting these could be our ticket to surviving, but that comes with a big caveat. These aren't always growing here. In fact, when Mario first arrives in Gelato Beach, they aren't growing here at all. So we're going to need to figure out a way to live without them, at least at first. And that's where the juice bar comes in. In the back corner of Gelato Beach, there's a juice bar that is presumably stocked with fluids, but we're working with the assumption that we're in a survival situation and don't have any money we can use to actually purchase drinks. Fortunately, that's where my secret weapon comes in. Theft. We're gonna steal from behind the counter after the store closes at night. After all, I doubt they'd lock up the whole thing, considering it's just kind of a big gazebo. And while they may keep some of the juices behind a locked drawer or something, who the fuck keeps a water spigot behind a lock and key? So I think it'll be a pretty easy heist to pull off. Just going in every night and drinking out of the sink. And while we can always live in our little leaf tent on the beach, I do fucking hate the leaf tent. I don't want to live in a leaf tent on the beach. So what if we try to upgrade our shelter a bit here? Now there is this one building on the beach that is never in use at any point during the game, the sand cabana. So we could always go ahead and take this building for our own use. Now this does open us up to a little bit of risk. Let's say, hypothetically, the owner does show up one day. Let's say, again, hypothetically, he asks us to leave, or else he's gonna go get the cops. In that scenario, we obviously can't let him leave. We'll lose our shelter if the cops show up. And I don't want to come to this, but again, remember, we're in a survival situation here. So we do have to ask the question, can I beat a Pianta to death with my bare hands? To figure this out, we're gonna have to figure out how good of a fighter these guys are. Now the game obviously never shows the Pianta fighting, but we can make some estimates. Let's look at this guy burning to death in the middle of Delphino Plaza. He is struggling to survive right now, so we can easily assume that this is his top running speed. Not very fast. I can outrun this man easily. And given the fact that he's on fire and never once considers using the water, we can also assume that Piantas are pretty stupid as well. This gives us a pretty good advantage. So if the guy who owns the cabana ever makes a run for the cops, we could probably move quickly enough to close the gap and actually, you know what? On second thought, he could probably remove us physically himself. The Pianta are pretty strong. We're going to have to make a living just living in this little makeshift tent, praying that the juice man never finds out that his spigot's getting sucked. A rough life for sure. Despite being the most scenic of the main levels we visited so far, Gelato Beach is definitely one of the worst places to live. We're barely surviving here. If a hurricane ever comes along and blows away our shelter, or if the juice man ever actually locks up his store, we're dead. But how do we fare on those secret levels? The first secret level of Gelato Beach is going to be just about as rough as any other secret level, honestly. In the sandcastle bud, there's a couple of stable platforms I can stand on, and it appears to be in some sort of a wacky alternate dimension, so we can assume the non-existent sun won't be a problem for us here. Other than that, it is entirely sand. There is no food, no water, and see that haze in the distance? This place is hot as hell. We're dying of dehydration in under 24 hours for sure here. But we got one other secret level, the legendary sandbird, which, believe it or not, also mostly sand. No food, no water, just a big ass tower and a big ass bird made of sand. On top of that, the bird is constantly rolling over, trying to throw me off its back. Like, if I can grab its neck and ride it all the way to the top of the tower, I could at the very least die of dehydration instead of falling to my death, so that's something we have to look forward to. But let's be honest here, I'm really fucking stupid, so I'm giving it like a 90% chance I just fall off to my death here. But that's enough talking about sand for now, because it's time to leave this beach and go to the amusement park, baby, which is also on the beach full of sand, but we'll just try not to think about that part of it. Peanut Park is a wonderful little amusement park with plenty of fresh water sources, along with a tree that produces infinite amounts of fruit. And if you don't like that, there's plenty of these little turtles walking around for some reason. So you could always eat the turtles, and that's all just inside the park. If we look outside, there's even more fruit buried in the sand here for some reason. And we also got these sunflowers. Sunflower seeds are delicious and can act as a good source of protein as well. So, you know, after we save them from the turtles, we can, you know. But once again, our biggest problem is going to be finding shelter. Now, the park has some shaded areas we can sleep in, but they're few and far in between. Plus, they're all small and none of them have any real walls or anything to keep the fucking piece of shit fucking turtles out. I fucking hate these things. Moreover, have you ever tried to sleep overnight in an amusement park before? You're not supposed to do that. Like, even if you get a job working there, they make you leave at night for some reason. And as we've previously established, there's not really any places to hide in here. Everything is open and visible from the outside. If they find me sleeping here, they're going to kick me out. And after 5 or 7 times of this happening, I don't think they're gonna let me back in again, which is a big problem, because even though we have some food outside and some palm trees we can make a little palm leaf tent out of, there's no fresh water on this beach. Survival in Peanut Park is literally going to be a game of hide and seek where we will die of dehydration if we lose. And like, I might be able to hide under this Ferris wheel for a few days, but there's already people poking around before we even get here. They're going to find me, and I'm going to be stuck on that beach. It's just a matter of time. Now, if you figure out a way you can stay in this park, let me know. But for now, I'm gonna have to put Peanut Park down as the first of the major levels, where I think we're going to die eventually. But what about the 2 secret levels? First, we have the Beach Secret Cannon, which, you guessed it, has no water in it. So we're just gonna put this secret level down with the rest of them, but don't discount our second secret level just yet, because the Yoshi Go Around secret is going to be a bit more interesting. Now, there's not much for us where we spawn in, and while I think it would be pretty difficult, I do think it's conceivable that a human could make all of these jumps all the way to this end area, where we find a giant watermelon cube along with this giant cube of ice. Now, we're gonna need to do some math to figure out how long we can live off of these 2 cubes. According to official Nintendo sources, Mario is 155 centimeters tall, or 5'1", which honestly raises more questions than it answers, like how fucking tall are these people? But whatever, we'll just work with the official number for the sake of simplicity. Now, these cubes are about 5 times Mario's height, making them about 465 million cubic centimeters in volume. Now, ice loses about 5% of its volume when it melts, but even after that, we'll be left with about 116,819 gallons of water. Now, assuming we don't lose any, at about 1 gallon per day, we'll have 320 years worth of water here. So there might not be any source of new fresh water in this level, but there is already enough here for us to live off of until the day we die. But we don't just need water. We need calories. Now, how many are in this watermelon? According to Google, there are 30 calories in every 100 grams of watermelon. There's about 3,331 grams in every gallon of watermelon, or just under 1,000 calories. Meaning, in order to survive, we will need to eat about 2 gallons of watermelon per day. Now, even if the skin of the watermelon makes up something ridiculous, like 50% of its total volume, that would still work out to there being about 80 years worth of food in this watermelon cube. And considering watermelons are about 90% water, we don't even need to drink from the ice cube after eating all of that. So yeah, actually this is quite literally a lifetime supply of watermelon in this cube here. Assuming it doesn't rot, of course, which I thought at first would be the part that kills us here, but keep in mind, this ice cube isn't melting at all, meaning that this entire level is below freezing. So it's actually pretty conceivable that this watermelon won't start rotting. Now, it won't be a pretty life. We'll just be sitting in this one tiny space, eating the same sugar-soaked food day in, day out, wondering where it all went wrong. So, you know, not too much different than being a YouTuber who spends all day in his apartment. So I think I can do it, actually. This is going to be the first secret level where I say survival is entirely possible. But now that we're done looking at a park that's almost entirely unsuited for human habitation, how about we head over to a location that specializes in it? Hotel Delphino is a pretty nice resort when it's not getting sucked into the ground or having its guests covered in electric goop or being haunted by ghosts, that is. Honestly, I could even take it with the ghosts. They keep telling me, oh, they're so spooky. Oh, they're terrorizing the guests. But that's nothing more than anti-ghost propaganda. Have you ever actually looked at these guys? They're just kind of floating around, having a good time. That's kind of what I do. And ghosts aren't all bad guys. Like, this one just likes go-karting and tennis. I like go-karting and tennis. I think we could be pretty good roommates. Provided I could actually get a room here, of course. I'm assuming we aren't spawning into this level with enough cash for a lifetime getaway at a 4-star hotel. So we're going to need to find a way to actually survive here. Now, outside, we have some fresh water, but no sources of food. So we're going to starve to death, unless we can get inside of the hotel to go get the food they have in there. Now, most hotels don't let you in without a reservation, and if we want a reservation, we're going to need money. which means we're going to need to find a job. Fortunately, this place seems to be in constant need for labor. Hell, they even hire Mario a couple of times just for straight up janitorial jobs like cleaning the beach. So I actually think it's conceivable we get a job here, and then we can use the money from that job to rent out a room. I mean, there's always a chance they don't actually pay a janitor enough to rent out a room forever at a 4-star hotel. But even in that case, we could at least buy meals here and then sleep out in this hut at night if needed. So not pretty, but it's a living. And if we do manage to actually get a room, living in a 4-star hotel sounds pretty nice, honestly. Cozy bed, free TV, a beautiful view, and a few hundred cool roommates. So, provided we can actually get a room, I'd probably have to say this is one of, if not the best places to live on Isle Delphino. But while the hotel itself is pretty cushy, we still have 2 secret levels we need to look at here. First off is the hotel secret lobby, which is located not in the lobby, but in the top floor. Kind of the furthest possible point away from the lobby, but whatever. Now, just like the Yoshi Carousel level, this level has plenty of watermelons and ice for water. Plus, since there's no harsh sunlight in here, no shelter required. This could probably keep us going for the rest of our life, but there is one big problem in that most of it is locked behind this wall jump that requires you to break these brick blocks. And while Mario can break bricks just by slamming his head into them, I cannot do that. So we're either going to have to scale this wall or more likely, be stuck in the first section of this level here forever. Now, it isn't all bad, because we do have this one giant watermelon here. It's not as big as some of the other ones, but it will give us water and calories for a while. But how long will it actually keep us going? It's going to depend mostly on how thick the rind of the watermelon itself is here, but after doing a little bit of math, I'd say we have about 5 to 8 years worth of food and water here. So, while we're going to survive longer than most of the secret levels, we are unfortunately still doomed. Death will be inevitable. But if we head back to the bottom of the hotel and into the casino and spend about 20 minutes spraying these slots and flipping these panels over and over until we win, we are rewarded with not money or even a free meal or anything, but instead a trip into the fucking cube dimension in the secret of Casino Delphino. There is no food or water, so we're gonna die. But you see that haze on the cubes in the distance? This is one of those levels where it's hot as fuck, so we are going to dehydrate in much less time than 72 hours here. But overall, despite the fact that we're guaranteed to die in both of the secret levels here eventually, I would have to say that Hotel Delphino is definitely one of the more survivable locations overall in Mario Sunshine. Moving on, if we walk over to the harbor in Delphino Plaza and stare into the sun like a fucking moron, we can visit Noki Bay. Now, there's not much going on here in the way of fruit like in some of the other levels, but this old man who keeps harassing us does have a fishing rod, and the bay is full of fish. So fishing seems like it's going to be a pretty viable source of food here. And the waterfall, although inconvenient, is a good source of fresh water as well. So all we need to do now is find shelter, which, given the intricate cave system that runs throughout the cliffs here, is a pretty small task. And if we catch enough fish, we might even be able to make a little money for ourselves. Maybe save up a bit? Maybe buy a second hut on the bay or something to live in? I don't know. It's something. Honestly, not a big fan of this bay. There's not much to do or see here unless you're interested in one of this area's many sub-levels, because we have not 1, not 2, but 3 extra levels for us to explore here, the most of any area outside of Delphino Plaza. First, we have the red coins in a bottle level, where Mario just kind of shrunk down and shoved inside of a bottle full of water. Now, while you humans may drown in just a few minutes, I am a fish that is made of paper, so I'll probably dissolve even faster if I get wet. So this level is going to be one of the few instances in Mario Sunshine where you're going to be dying instantly. This is not a good place, honestly. But moving on to the second level at the bottom of the Noki waterfall, we can just kind of die instantly again. Yeah, this is the second level in a row that's entirely underwater. Not much to say here about this one, but while these first 2 secret levels may be duds, there's still one more we need to take a look at. If we go to the top of the bay, we can enter the Shell's Secret, the third and final sub-area of Noki Bay, where we will find ourselves spawned into the bottom of a glass box. Yeah, so unless you can wall jump out of here like Mario, we're fucked. And even if you could get out of this box, it's not going to help you very much, because there is no food or water to be found. On top of that, this is another level where it's so hot you can literally see the heat waves in the air. So we're probably going to die of dehydration a lot faster here than some of the other levels. So while even if the bay itself is pretty livable, I do have to say that Noki Bay might just have the worst group of sub-levels to try to live in overall. Not a single one where we're even going to last 72 hours. But with Noki Bay complete, there's still one major level in the game we have left to explore. Climbing to the top of the Shine Shrine Gate, we can enter this warp pipe and travel to Beyonta Village, the final of the main stages in Mario Sunshine, and my personal favorite as a child. In particular, I was always a fan of this level where you get flood taken away and have to navigate the village while avoiding the flaming goop. I always just kind of vibed with the jungle village aesthetic you got while just walking around the town. Wait, where's the village in this village? There's no housing. Where do these people sleep? All there is in this level is scaffolding, which appears to be made like of bamboo and like, I don't know, like rubber bands, if the sound of walking on them is anything to go off of. Ah, well, I guess that just means everyone is homeless here. So at least we're not going to be an outcast or anything if we can't find permanent shelter. In addition, the villagers here are much more friendly to Mario than the people of Bianca Hills, so I actually feel safe being outside with them. And despite the lack of housing, I don't think finding shelter is going to be very difficult either, thanks to the scaffolding under the village. We can just kind of rest on top of it here, while the village itself acts like a nice sort of roof to keep us safe from the sun and weather. Food will be an easy ask as well, as this tree gives us everything we need, instantly growing fruit as fast as we can get rid of it. So all we really need to find is some fresh water. Walking around this village in the day, you'll notice water is scarce, but come nightfall, the springs in the center of the village begin to flow, and while only having access to water half the day sounds like it could be a problem, we can always just kind of scoop some up in like a bottle or a leaf or something. I don't know, it's workable. That being said, considering the villagers themselves don't have houses, we're kind of living in a glorified homeless camp, so despite the nice scenery, this is probably one of the worst places you can actually live in the game. But there's still one more section of the village we have yet to explore. If you grab a Yoshi and spray the goo off this mushroom, we can enter the secret of the village's underside, which is one of the more iconic secret levels in the game, because rather than actually doing any platforming yourself here, the entire level centers around being chucked around by the chucksters. But while fun, it's not really going to help us out very much because there is no water here at all. Like, we got some strutting stews you can eat if you're subscribing to that, but like many of the other secret levels in this game, we're going to be dead in under 72 hours. So with that, we have just one level left to explore. The final level in the game, Corona Mountain, home of Bowser, along with this fuck-ass boat. If you've ever played this game before, you know what I'm talking about. The physics for this boat are just awful. But if we don't lose the will to live upon seeing this thing, how long can we actually survive? Honestly, not very long, believe it or not. The volcano is not a great place to live. Right off the bat, we spawn on this platform with the only way forward being to time your jumps as you move across these deadly traps. Frankly, I don't think a human could actually make any of these jumps, and there's no food or water where we spawn, so there's pretty much no hope for survival there. But assuming you do somehow make it across, you are rewarded with this water fountain you can drink from. So at the very least, you get to die of starvation instead. Or do you? Because you see, I think there's a chance we're going to avoid death by starvation here, because we won't be living long enough to get hungry in the first place. Let's talk about wet bulb temperature. To oversimplify a bit, the wet bulb temperature is the ambient air temperature at which the human body can no longer dissipate heat through sweat. In less humid environments, like the inside of a volcano, humans can theoretically survive indefinitely up to about 130 degrees Fahrenheit or 55 degrees Celsius. But how hot is it here in this level? Now, lava itself can be up to about 700 degrees, which is hot enough to where it really doesn't matter whether I'm talking about Celsius or Fahrenheit, honestly. So yeah, we're dying of a heat stroke long before we starve here. Honestly, outside of the couple of levels where we're just drowning instantly, this is probably the most deadly level in the game. But with that, we're done. Every single level in Mario Sunshine ranked on survivability. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised there's only 9 levels here where perpetual survival is actually possible. And even more surprised that one of the secret levels ended up being more survivable than the fucking amusement park. Kinda wild if you think about it. Overall though, I think most of these secret levels are pretty easy to avoid if you know where they are. So as long as you aren't jumping into random caves or getting stranded in Peanut Park, I think you'll be pretty much able to survive anywhere you go on Isle Delphino. But that's it for today. If you think any of these levels are either more or less survivable than what I've listed them as here, let me know in the comments. And hey, if this video does well enough, I can look at how survivable other games are as well. So let me know if there's any games in particular you think it'd be fun to take a look at. Alright, bye bye.